She found her daughter at last. But her daughter only wanted one thing. That's what the neighbors will whisper when I'm gone, I suppose. That's what they'll say about poor Margaret Hale, who lived alone on Elm Street since Walter passed. She waited 23 years for that girl, they'll say. And look what it got her. But they weren't there. They don't know the whole story. I'm 71 years old. 71 years, 4 months, and 12 days, to be exact. And I just discovered that my own daughter tried to destroy me. To understand how I could be so foolish, you need to understand what I'd lost. Walter and I tried for 5 years to have a baby. 5 years of temperature charts, doctor visits, prayers that felt like shouting into an empty well. Then came the miscarriages. 3 of them. The last one, I was in the grocery store, right there in the cereal aisle. By the time the adoption agency called, I'd already given up. But they said they had a baby for us. She was born to a 16-year-old girl in Cleveland who wanted to go to college. I remember reading those words, wanted to go to college. And I felt something twist in my chest. I'd wanted that too, you know? I'd wanted so many things. But what I wanted, sitting in that agency office with fluorescent lights humming overhead, was to be someone's mother. To finally be someone's mother. They let us name her Elizabeth. We called her Lizzie when she was small. The first 3 months were bliss wrapped in exhaustion. Walter would come home from the Goodyear factory, and I'd have her bathed and fed, asleep in her yellow room. We'd sit at the kitchen table, listening to the baby monitor hiss. "We did it," he'd say. And I'd nod, not trusting my voice. She learned to laugh at 4 months. Not the reflex kind, real laughter. And when she laughed, it sounded like music I'd been waiting my whole life to hear. By her first birthday, she was walking. By 2, she was saying mama in a way that made my heart swell. We had a party in the backyard with a cake I'd spent 3 hours decorating. It had a duck on it, just like the receiving blanket I'd wrapped her in from the hospital. I still have that blanket, tucked away in a cedar chest in my bedroom. It still smells like her. Or what I remember of her. Then the social worker came. I remember the day so clearly. The sunlight hit the linoleum in our kitchen in a particular way. Elizabeth was in her high chair, smearing bananas on the tray. The social worker had expensive shoes, brown leather pumps with a little gold buckle. I remember stupid details like that because I was trying to focus on anything except what she was saying. "There's been a mistake," she told us. The birth mother, she was coerced. Her parents pressured her. She wants Elizabeth back. "She can't have her back," I said. "She's ours. The papers are signed." But the woman kept talking about legal technicalities, about a signature that wasn't witnessed properly, about a judge who was sympathetic to birth mothers. We fought. God, how we fought. Walter cashed in his pension early, borrowed money from his brother, hired a lawyer. We went to court 4 times. Each time I dressed Elizabeth in her best clothes, the green velvet dress with the white collar, and each time the birth mother sat on the other side of the courtroom, not looking at us, just looking at her hands. She was 17 by then. She had lawyers paid for by her parents. They were well off, I heard. Her father was a dentist. The judge gave us 6 months. 6 months to say goodbye. They called it transitioning. I called it dying in slow motion. I packed up the yellow room box by box, crying over every sock, every board book, every teething ring. The last photograph I took showed Elizabeth on my lap at the kitchen table. Her hand was in my hair. She was laughing at something Walter had said. You can see it in my face in that picture. The person I was before. A person who believed love was enough to keep a family together. The social worker came in the morning. I'd packed a small suitcase. Just essentials, they said. But I tucked in the duck blanket. I wasn't leaving that behind. Elizabeth looked at me when the woman picked her up. Really looked at me. And she said, Mama? Not as a name, as a question. And I watched them drive away. Walter and I didn't talk about it after. We tried to have another baby, but my body was done. The doctors said the stress had taken its toll. So we settled into a life that wasn't quite the one we'd planned. He worked his shifts at the factory. I got a job at the library, checking out books and recommending novels to women who came looking for escape. I read every book about mothers and daughters, searching for my own story in their pages. It was never there. The endings were too neat. The love was too simple. Years passed. Too many years. I kept the cedar chest. I kept the photo album, 2 copies, one for us, one for them. The blanket stayed folded inside, smelling of cedar and thyme. Every anniversary of her adoption, I'd mark the date on my kitchen calendar with a little yellow duck sticker. Then, one year, I just stopped counting. When Walter died, I was 62. Massive heart attack. He'd been mowing the lawn, and I was inside making iced tea, and when I looked out the window, he was just gone, lying on his back in the grass, the mower still running in circles. I sold the house a year later. Too many ghosts. Too many empty rooms. Moved into this little place on Elm Street. 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. Perfect for 1 person. I kept the cedar chest. I kept the photo album. I kept the duck blanket. I told myself I was done with dreaming. Done with what ifs and if onlys. My church friends set me up with a widows group that met every Tuesday. We'd drink coffee and talk about our dead husbands and our living children. And I'd sit there quiet. Because what could I say? My daughter is out there somewhere, but she's not really mine. They wouldn't understand. Then came the letter. It arrived on a Tuesday, of all days. I'd just gotten back from the widows group, standing at the kitchen sink rinsing out my coffee mug, when I saw the mailman through the window. He waved, and I waved back, the way you do. The letter was tucked in with the bills and grocery store flyers. Plain white envelope. My name in careful cursive that looked practiced. Not a child's hand, a woman's. Margaret Hale, it said. No misses, no return address. Just my name written like it was being etched in stone. I sat at the kitchen table for 20 minutes before I opened it. My hands were shaking so bad I had to use a butter knife to slit the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded 3 times. The same careful handwriting. Dear Mrs. Hale, it started. My breath caught. Only one person in the world would call me that. I don't know if you remember me. My name is Elizabeth. I believe you were my mother for a little while. She wrote that she was 25 now, living in Chicago, working as a paralegal. She said she'd thought about me often, wondered about me. She said she'd had a good life, that her adoptive parents, her real parents, she called them, had been kind, that she'd gone to college like her birth mother wanted. But there are things I need to know, the letter said. Things only you can tell me about my medical history, about my heritage, about why I was given up. I read that letter 12 times. 12 times until the words blurred together, until I could recite it from memory. "Walter!" I whispered to the empty kitchen. But Walter wasn't there to study me anymore. I wrote back that night. 3 pages, front and back. Everything I could remember. The colic, the duck blanket, the way she slept on her stomach, which terrified me. The sound of her laugh. I told her about Walter, the factory, the house with the yellow room. I told her I still had her picture by my bed. She called 3 days later. Her voice was older, deeper, professional, but underneath all of that, there was something that sounded like that little girl asking, "Mama?" as a question. We talked for an hour. She asked about my health, whether I was alone. I asked about her life, her job, her dreams. She didn't have many dreams, it seemed, just plans, goals. She said she's very organized. She likes things to have a purpose. Then she asked if she could visit. "I'd like to see you," she said. "See where I started." See where she started. Not see you. Not reconnect. See where she started like I was a landmark on a map. But I didn't care. She was coming. My daughter was coming home. "Yes," I said. "Please, come home." I spent the next week cleaning parts of the house I hadn't touched in years. I baked banana bread, her favorite, according to the letter. I bought fresh flowers, yellow ones, because she looked so pretty in that yellow room. I washed the duck blanket and placed it on the back of the sofa, casual, like it was always there. I didn't sleep. She arrived on a Saturday morning, in a rental car. A sleek silver thing that looked too expensive for a paralegal. She wore a pantsuit, navy blue, with a white blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older than 25. But her eyes, pause one sec, her eyes were mine, green with flecks of gold, the same shape, almond with a slight upward tilt at the corners. I saw them and I was 28 again, holding a baby in a kitchen with humming lights. "Mrs. Hale," she said, extending her hand, formal, like we were business associates. "Elizabeth," I whispered, and I pulled her into my arms before she could stop me. She stiffened at first, breath, then relaxed. For 3 seconds, I held my daughter. For 3 seconds, the world was whole again. She was polite, so polite it hurt. She complimented the house, the banana bread, the flowers. She touched the duck blanket with fingertips that remembered nothing. She asked questions about Walter, about his work, about how he died. She took notes on her phone, actual notes. I watched her thumbs move across the screen and felt something cold snake down my spine. But I ignored it. Pause one sec. I ignored the way her eyes scanned the room, cataloging. I ignored the way she asked about the neighborhood. Property values, she said. Just curious. I ignored it all because she was here. She was sitting at my kitchen table, eating my banana bread. And when she laughed at something I said, a real laugh, not the polite one, it sounded like music. She stayed for 4 hours. When she left, she kissed my cheek and said she'd be in touch. She promised. She used that word. Promised. The letters started coming every week. Longer ones. Questions about the family. Did Walter have siblings? Where were they? Did he have insurance policies? What about his pension? Was it still being paid? I answered everything. Grateful to have something to give her. Grateful she wanted to know. She called every Sunday at 6, like clockwork. We'd talk for exactly 30 minutes. She'd ask about my day, my health, my finances. My finances. That word started appearing more often. Casual at first. Are you comfortable, Mrs. Hale? Financially, I mean. I worry about you alone. She sounded so sincere, so concerned. I told her I was fine. Walter's pension was modest, but I'd been frugal. I had the house, paid off years ago. I had savings. I had enough. More than enough. Nothing to spend it on. That's good, she'd say. That's really good. It's important to be secure. In June, she visited again. This time, she stayed overnight. I made up the spare room, but she ended up sleeping in my bed with me, like we were having a slumber party. We talked until 2 in the morning. She asked about my will. Just practical, she said. I'm a paralegal after all. I see these things go wrong all the time. People dying intestate, families torn apart. I want to help you avoid that. I didn't have a will. Walter and I had talked about it, but we'd never gotten around to it. We were young. We thought we had time. Let me help you, she said. I'll draft something simple. A template. You can take it to a lawyer in town, have them review it. She was so helpful, so thoughtful. She went through my files, old tax returns, bank statements, the deed to the house. She organized everything into neat folders. She made spreadsheets. I watched her work and felt a pride I couldn't explain. My daughter, so capable, so smart. She asked about the deed. Was it in both our names, Walter and mine? Yes, I said. But when he died, it transferred to me automatically. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. I remembered the phrase because the lawyer had explained it 3 times. Elizabeth nodded, made a note. And your beneficiaries? On the pension, the insurance? I'd named Norma, Walter's sister in Florida. We weren't close, but she was family. The only family I had left. Norma, Elizabeth said, tasting the name. She never had kids, right? No, just a condo and a cat. Elizabeth smiled. A smile I'd never seen before. I could be your beneficiary, she said softly. If you wanted to. If you think of me that way. If I think of her that way. As if there was any other way to think of her. She visited again in July. This time, she brought papers, not a template, but actual documents. A will she'd prepared. Everything to Elizabeth Marie Hale. My name for her, the name I'd given her. She'd kept it after all these years. Or taken it back. She'd also brought a power of attorney form. Just in case, she said. If you ever get sick, have a stroke, something like that, I'd be able to help, manage things, make sure you're taken care of. I signed them. Both documents. right there at the kitchen table, using the pen she'd brought. A nice pen, a lawyer's pen. She had them notarized the next day, a friend of a friend. It was all very official, very proper. The calls increased. Every other day now. Always around dinner time. She'd ask what I was eating, if I was taking my vitamins, if I'd been to the doctor. She worried about my blood pressure. She worried about my heart. She worried about me falling. She was so worried. In August, she brought up the house again. Property values are skyrocketing. Your place could be worth a lot. Have you had it appraised? I hadn't. Why would I? I wasn't selling. But you should know what you have, what your assets are. It's important for estate planning. She knew an appraiser, a friend. He could come by, give me a free estimate, no obligation. I let her schedule it. A man in a polo shirt came on a Thursday, walked through my house with a clipboard. He spent a long time in the basement where Walter's tools still hung on their pegboard. He measured the attic. He commented on the original hardwood floors, the crown molding. He said, "This is a gold mine. People love these old neighborhoods." Elizabeth was thrilled when I told her the number. "That's incredible, Mrs. Hale. That's so much more than you thought, isn't it?" It was nearly $300,000. That's a legacy. That's something real, something lasting. In September, she brought up the future, about how she could quit her job, move back to Ohio, take care of me. "You shouldn't be alone," she said. "Not at your age. What if something happens?" I told her I had Doris. I had the church. I was fine. "But family is different," she said. And she took my hand, and she looked at me with my own eyes, and she said, "I'm your family, Mrs. Hale. I always have been. I just didn't know how to find you." I cried then. For the first time in years, I really cried. Great, gasping sobs that shook my bones. Elizabeth held me and she cried too, and for a moment, just a moment, I believed her. I believed that all of it had been real. The letters, the calls, the concern, it had all been real. The next day, she brought more papers, a quitclaim deed. She explained it very carefully. If I added her to the deed, she could help manage the property, make repairs, handle taxes. It would be easier if something happened to me, she said. Streamlined. No probate, no court fees. Everything just flows. I told her I needed to think about it. She nodded, understanding. "Of course, it's a big decision. Take your time." But she didn't stop bringing it up. In every call, every visit, she'd mention something that needed fixing. The gutters, the water heater, the roof, which was getting old. "If I were on the deed," she'd say, "I could just handle it. You wouldn't have to worry." I met with my own lawyer, a man I'd known for years, Henry Abrams. He read the papers slowly, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He read them twice. "Margaret," he said, and his voice had that tone, the one doctors use when they're about to tell you something bad. "This girl is trying to take everything you have." Because she said her bank was giving her trouble. Cash would be easier. I didn't hear from her for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of calling her phone, leaving voicemails that went unanswered. 2 weeks of staring at the cedar chest, wondering if I'd been a fool. Doris came over and found me crying. I told her everything. She held my hand and said, "Oh, honey, you have to talk to Henry again, right now." Henry pulled strings. He had a friend in Chicago, a private investigator. It took 3 days. The investigator called on a Friday. Elizabeth Marie Hale wasn't a paralegal. She wasn't in an accident. She didn't have a broken leg. She had a drug habit. Heroin. For 3 years. She'd been fired from her job 6 months ago. She was being evicted from her apartment. She had warrants. 3 of them. Theft, fraud, possession. The $12,000 was gone. All of it. The investigators said she'd probably scored within an hour of leaving my house. I didn't cry when Henry told me. I sat in his office, in that leather chair that smelled of old pipe smoke, and I felt something crack inside me. Not my heart. Something deeper. Something like faith. The faith that love could find a way back. The faith that she'd come back for me, not for what I could give her. She called the next day, sounding fine, better than fine, energetic. She said the insurance had come through. She'd be able to pay me back soon. She asked again about the deed, said the landlord was threatening eviction. If she had a stake in a property, she could get a loan, leverage her assets. I asked her, point blank, if she was using drugs. The silence on the other end of the phone was so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she laughed. Not the music. Not the laugh I'd waited for. A sharp, bitter sound. "Is that what you think of me? After everything? I come back to you. I try to have a relationship, and you accuse me of being a junkie?" I told her what I'd learned. The investigator, the warrants, everything. She changed. Right there on the phone, she changed. The polite, concerned daughter evaporated. What was left was something hard, something cold. "You had me investigated? You spied on me?" I said I had a right to know. I said I was her mother. "You're not my mother," she spat. "You're a stranger who gave me up. Don't you dare act like you have any right to judge me." I didn't give her up. They took her. I wanted to say it, but the words wouldn't come. They were stuck behind the sob in my throat. She said, "You know what? Keep your money. Keep your house. Keep your precious Walter's pension. I don't need you. I never needed you. I just thought you'd want to help your daughter, but you're just like everyone else. Judgmental, suspicious, selfish." She called back 3 days later, crying this time, begging. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sick. I'm so sick. I need help. Please, please help me. You're the only person who ever loved me." I wanted to hang up. I wanted to be strong. But she was right. I was the only person who ever loved her. The only one who'd fought for her. The only one who'd cried over her every night for 23 years. I told her I'd help her get treatment. I'd pay for rehab, a good one. Anywhere she wanted. I'd be there for her. She was quiet. Then she said, "I need $20,000 for a place in California." It's the best. I checked. 20,000. I told her I'd think about it. Henry was furious. He said she was using me. He said she'd never go to rehab. He said if I gave her that money, I'd never see her again. And I knew he was right. I knew it in my bones. But I also knew that if I didn't try, if I didn't give her this last chance, I'd never forgive myself. I'd spend whatever years I had left wondering if I could have saved her. So I made a choice. A choice that would change everything. I called her back. I told her I'd give her the money, but not as cash. I'd pay the facility directly. I'd make arrangements. She'd have to go within the week. She agreed. Too quickly. She gave me the name of the place. It checked out. Henry confirmed it was real, and I wired the money. 23,000, because I added 3 for incidentals, for whatever she might need. But then I called Henry back. I have a plan, I said. The day she was supposed to leave, I got a call from the facility. Elizabeth had never checked in. They'd held her bed for 3 days, but she was a no-show. The money was non-refundable after 48 hours. She called me that night. Hi. I could hear it in her voice, that slippery, loose quality. I'm not going, she said. I can't do it. I'm not strong enough. I asked her where the money was. Gone. Just like your 12,000. Just like your faith in me. Gone. I hung up. I didn't cry. I went to the cedar chest and I took out the duck blanket and I held it to my face. But it didn't smell like her anymore. It just smelled like cedar and time and foolish hope. She called again a week later. Angry, furious. She said I'd humiliated her, that I'd tried to control her, that I'd never been her mother, just a bank account with a face. She said she was going to sue me for emotional distress. She'd talked to a lawyer, she said. She had rights. I told her to do what she had to do. I was done. But Henry and I had prepared. We'd documented everything. The fraud, the theft, the fake accident, the money taken under false pretenses. We'd been in contact with Chicago PD about the warrants. Everything was coordinated. When Elizabeth arrived the next week, she looked different. New car, newer than the last one, expensive clothes. She'd come into money. The money I'd given her. The money I'd earned through years of frugality and sacrifice. I invited her in, offered her coffee. She declined. She wanted to get this done. She had a flight to catch, she said. Back to Chicago. Important meeting. I sat her at the kitchen table. Henry walked in. With him was Detective Morrison, a woman from the fraud unit, and a court-appointed guardian because Henry had filed for emergency custody of my assets, citing exploitation. Elizabeth looked at them, then at me. What is this? She said. This, I said, my voice steady, is the end of the line. The detective read her rights. The fraud, the theft, the attempted extortion, the warrants in Illinois. They'd been in contact with Chicago PD. She wasn't going back to a meeting. She was going back to face charges. She screamed at me, called me every name she could think of, said I was a monster, said I'd set her up, said I'd never loved her. I stood there, and I let her scream. I let her say it all. And when they let her out in handcuffs, I stood on the porch, and I watched them go, just like I'd watched her leave 23 years ago. But this time, I didn't cry. This time, I didn't wonder what I could have done differently. This time, I knew. The trial was quick. She pled out. 3 years in Ohio Women's Correctional. Eligible for parole in 18 months. I didn't attend the sentencing. Henry went. He said she looked small. Small and young and lost. He said she never looked at him. just stared at her hands. I wrote her a letter. One letter. I told her that the duck blanket was still in the cedar chest, that it would always be there, that I would always be here, but that love without trust is just a transaction. And I was done being a bank. I told her that when she got out, if she was clean, if she was serious, she could write me again. But the next time, there would be no money, no house, no power of attorney. Just a mother, just a daughter, just the truth. She never wrote back. It's been 6 months now. I check the mail every day like a fool. But there's nothing. Just bills and grocery flyers and the church bulletin. I'm 72 years old. I still go to the widows group. I still drink coffee with Doris. I still have her picture by my bed. Though sometimes I turn it face down because it hurts to look at it. I still have the will Henry drafted. It leaves everything to the adoption agency. To help other mothers, other daughters. To try to make something good out of all this brokenness. Sometimes, late at night, I think I hear the phone ring. I think it's her, calling to say she's sorry, calling to say she's clean, calling to say she wants to come home. But when I pick up, there's just dial tone. Just the empty hiss of a connection that was never really there. And I sit in my kitchen, in the house that's still mine, and I hold the duck blanket to my face, and I smell cedar and thyme and the ghost of baby powder, and I whisper into the silence, I was your mother.